I have gone on quite the journey with Wuthering Heights. This was supposed to be a single one-day reading vlog. Make a cup of tea, crack open a classic, jot down a few thoughts, and call it a day. But the book had other plans for me. This turned into a full-on, slightly obsessive deep dive into a single novel. So today's video is basically me losing my grip on the original plan. I've broken everything down into 3 parts to keep things organized. Part 1 is all about my first impressions and initial reactions to the book. This section was recorded immediately after me finishing the book for the first time. Part 2 is where the chaos truly begins. I decided it wasn't enough for me to just read the book. I needed to watch 6 different adaptations of Wuthering Heights. I don't know why I did this to myself, but here we are. Then in part 3, we come back to the book because after all of that, I decided to reread Wuthering Heights. Now that I had so much new context, I wanted to see how the story would change. And let me tell you, I definitely came away with some mixed feelings, but we'll get into all of that later. Before we dive in, just a quick warning, there will be some spoilers. I tried to keep things light, but if you've never ventured into the world of Wuthering Heights before, just know I will be talking about plot points. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get into it. Here is my very first reaction to reading Wuthering Heights for the first time. I literally just finished Wuthering Heights. I didn't love it. I didn't love it like I thought I would. I mean, there were parts that I enjoyed, but overall, it made me really angry. I really hated all of the characters, and I didn't find the ending satisfying at all. And I really hated Heathcliff. And I also do not understand how this book is called like a love story, or it's called like a tragic love story about star-crossed lovers. Like, I feel like I have been gaslit for years about what the story is actually about. It just didn't land. Like, I don't really understand the hype. I don't understand the hype. I think Heathcliff was like one of the worst characters I've ever read about. He was so horrible and mean and just evil and just physically abusive and emotionally abusive, but really physically abusive. And the way that he treated the people around him, like his wife, the children, it made me so angry. I was infuriated reading this, especially like the second half until the end. I was absolutely infuriated. And then also I know that he had like a really traumatic childhood and he himself was abused. So a little bit I can understand his personality and why he is so bitter and mean, but at the same time, just because you were abused doesn't mean you have to grow up to be an abuser. One thing that I want to do that I think could change my mind a little bit is watch some of the different adaptations. I will come back to you guys in a little bit, maybe a couple of days, and see how I'm feeling then. It's been about a week since I finished reading Wuthering Heights. I felt like I wanted to reread this book because I really want to like it. I didn't have like the most amazing feelings about it. I want to pick up on things that I missed the first time. I'm actually 16% into my reread, and there are things that I'm picking up on this reread that I can say are like real positives of the book. I really love when we get introduced to Lockwood's character when he is like arriving at Wuthering Heights and there's a snowstorm. The whole scene where Lockwood sleeps in one of the rooms in Wuthering Heights and finds the journals he's reading, one of Catherine's journals that she's like written her name in a bunch of times. And then the most like, to me, my favorite scene of the book, the scene where she's like wailing, "Let me in." Like, it's so creepy. My goal for today is I want to watch as many of the Wuthering Heights adaptations as possible. It'll like bring it to life for me a little bit more, and I will become like totally just immersed in the Wuthering Heights universe, and when I close my eyes, I will be seeing the characters and I will be seeing the world. Like I said, hopefully my appreciation will grow for it, and I feel like it already is a little bit upon having this reread and really giving this book like a super fair chance. I'm already into this challenge. First up, I just finished rewatching the 1939 adaptation, and I watched this on Prime Video. I'm gonna try to tell you guys where I watched it in case you want to access them. I liked how this movie added a lot of atmosphere. I think probably the black and white aspect as well, like, and then the music, everything about it, like, it just added this really like spooky tone to it. I do think that the actors that they chose were excellent, especially Kathy, Heathcliff, and Isabella. They kind of dramatically change Heathcliff's character, and they take almost all of like the bite out of him. In the book, he is very, very mean to the point of, I would call him evil, and he's extremely abusive to the people around him. And in the movie really, really pushes this love story aspect. The next adaptation starts it out with the great love story. Like, they're all pitching this as a love story, and I'm like, did we read the same book? One of my biggest problems with it is that this movie cuts out the whole entire second half of the book. So it's kind of like if you only get the villain's origin story and see like how they became a villain, then you're gonna have a lot of sympathy for them, right? I felt so bad for Isabella Linton in this adaptation, in the book. Like, she is the real tragedy of Wuthering Heights. It's not Heathcliff and Catherine's star-crossed loverness. It's poor Isabella. Like, she drew the short straw. And I wish I could just like pluck her out of the story and rescue her, because she deserves so much better than what she gets. This movie is so dramatic. Oh my gosh. I guess go big or go home. But for me, like, there was points where it was so syrupy that it became a little bit sickening to me. Like, it was hard for me to stomach it. It makes it into something that it's not, in my opinion. I don't find this to be a love story. I just finished the 1958 adaptation. So let's start with the few things that I did enjoy about this adaptation. I liked how they included this scene where Catherine is talking to Nellie in her room, and she's kind of like lost in this delirium, and she's like babbling nonsense to her. I liked that part in the book. I like that they included it in the movie. They do show the darker, harsher side of Heathcliff, especially towards the end of this movie. Once again, they do leave out almost the whole second half of the book. They pull a little bit of it out, but many of the characters are like completely omitted. The acting in this movie was, once again, very, very dramatic. It's very different from how acting is nowadays, and I will say that it's not really to my liking. I know that that might be a huge draw for some people, and they might really enjoy this like old Hollywood drama. But for me, the acting was a bit off-putting. They're taking such a different spin on this book and putting it in a direction that I don't really like. So it's actually making me appreciate the book more. The next adaptation that I finished watching is the 1970s movie. And this movie I found and watched on Tubi. They took the book, they picked parts that they liked out of it, and then they went in like the most craziest, wildest direction that I was not expecting. They totally cut out Lockwood's character, and they open up the movie with a scene that is very different from the book, but it really sets the tone for where we're going to go. It was also very strange. I was getting romance vibes between Nellie and Hindley. Very bizarre. Wasn't expecting that. There was a scene in this movie that was really genuinely funny, and it's when Heathcliff and Kathy are kids. They creep over to the Linton's house and spy on Isabella and Edgar Linton. They end up scaring them, like they see them through the window and they scare them. That part in the movie was so funny. I really loved this actress for Nellie, even though she was younger than I pictured Nellie in the book being. I really loved her demeanor. Definitely my favorite Nellie that we've seen so far in any of these adaptations. I also thought the Heathcliff actor was pretty good. He was sometimes a little bit over like melodramatic, but I guess that's Heathcliff's character and that's this book as a whole. So I started to think of this as like how I consider when I watch Jane Austen adaptations, is that they all exist within different parallel universes. So like the book is one universe, or maybe it's like the first universe, and then every adaptation is some like parallel universe spinning off from the first one. So they all exist, but they're all like in different timelines. And that is a way that I want to start thinking about these adaptations, so that I don't get angry about them like changing so much and going in like a totally different direction. Like, it's okay, yeah, like that can be real. It's just a different universe from the book. I think this movie, the 1970s adaptation, was the most accurate portrayal of how messed up Heathcliff is. He's really rough with Kathy in this one. Like, there's times he hits her, he pushes her down. I don't know how you can watch that and then be like, yeah, this is a love story. Like, I want them to be together. They're destined to be together. Like, no, like, I'm not rooting for this at all. The ending was really where this went off the rails. I think the best part about this adaptation was Nellie's character. I really loved the actress who played her. I feel like she brought Nellie to life. I'm trying to imagine Wuthering Heights as more of a horror story, because what happens with all these characters is a horror story. I just finished watching the 1992 adaptation. I ended up finding it for free on Pluto TV. It did what I have been asking for these movies to do the whole time: include the second half of the book. Like, is that so much to ask, to include like a whole half of the story? This is the only adaptation so far that has included Emily Bronte herself into the story. When the movie starts, she is walking into what I think is Wuthering Heights. They really emphasize in this version and lean hard into Heathcliff's personality and his possessiveness and his cruelty. There is a part very early on where Heathcliff is speaking to Catherine. After Catherine starts to become entwined with the Lintons, she starts spending more and more time with them and away from Heathcliff. One of the birds on the property ended up laying eggs, and the babies hatched, and he ends up killing the baby birds. And he says that it is because Catherine never came back to see them. There was no reason for him to show her. He decided that he would just kill them. So that was horrifying. And then there's this another part where he's showing this sheet that he has written out of the days where Catherine has spent with the Lintons and then the days where Catherine has spent with him. It feels a lot like a super jealous, possessive boyfriend. I love how this version does not romanticize Heathcliff. There was a part in this that I literally gasped out loud. I knew this was coming, but basically there is a scene where Isabella is now with Heathcliff and living in Wuthering Heights. They flash to Isabella's face and it is like covered in bruises and cuts. I like how this movie framed the relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff. It shows the obsession and the revenge, the purely destructive quality of their relationship and how it affects everyone around them. This adaptation made me feel and react more deeply than any of the other ones I've watched so far. This is the fourth adaptation I have watched, and I have 2 more left to go. I finished watching the 1998 Wuthering Heights adaptation. I watched this on Prime Video. I think that this adaptation had the most believable chemistry between Heathcliff and Catherine. It had the most beautiful score. I loved the music in this movie. It was very haunting and very emotional. There was a lot of memorable moments in this movie, and it was the one that got closest for me to see Heathcliff and Catherine and want them to be together, or at least appreciate them having this connection. Adult Heathcliff is like following out onto the moors, the children versions of him and Kathy, and again there's this another like foreshadowing callback to earlier in the movie, and I love that kind of stuff where like it's laying these breadcrumbs and you have to pay attention, and if you did a good job and you remembered them, then it's like this full circle moment. I love a full circle moment. It was really unexpected for me to get so emotional about Heathcliff and Catherine. That is something that I'm so conflicted with and I'm having a hard time with, is that he ruins lives, but he still gets a happy ending at the end of this. So that's why I'm so conflicted, because the ending did make me emotional and I got pretty close to like rooting for him and Kathy to end up together. The reason that I feel like I hate Heathcliff so much is because of how much pain that he causes everyone around him. I was like halfway rooting for it, but then halfway feeling like there's no justice. Like Heathcliff doesn't deserve a happy ending. But this movie, again, I think this is why it's my favorite one. It made me feel the most things. This one got the closest to making me actually feel sympathy for him. The next generation love story between young Catherine Linton and Hareton really brings like this element of hope to the story. This like light, warm-hearted love story that I can honestly root for. It was definitely like a moment of relief after all of the depression and darkness of the story as a whole. It really made me want to go back to this book and rate it 5 stars. What I wanted from this experience is to appreciate the book more. And this is the first adaptation that really like almost turned me into a fangirl of Wuthering Heights. I really enjoyed this one. This is the one that I would recommend beyond any of the others so far. I do have one more adaptation to watch. As of now, this one is my favorite. I just a minute ago finished watching the 2012 adaptation. I found this version on Tubi. The most different from all of the adaptations I've watched so far. It was almost like experimental. Something really interesting about the production of this movie is that there was absolutely no music, no score to this. The only background noises was like the sound of the wind, of the birds, of the insects. Oh, another thing I liked is this is the first movie to actually portray Heathcliff and Catherine as kids. Some of the other movies show them as children, but they move them up into adulthood way sooner than they are in the book. So I really like that, and I really like the 2 actors that played Heathcliff and Cathy as they were kids. Yeah, and then the second half of the movie, they are adults. And this is where the movie kind of lost me a little bit. This movie is over 2 hours long, which, oh my gosh, it got tiring at a certain point. Like I said, this movie's really quiet. There's no music. It's super muted and like understated, which is like the total exact opposite of the first 2 adaptations, the black and white ones. I started to get to the point where I was like, I want to take a nap. Like, I want to take a nap listening to this movie and just playing this movie in the background, because that would be like the most relaxing nap I've ever had. So the whole first hour of this 2 hour plus long movie is Heathcliff and Catherine as children. And like I said, I was like really interested in that half and really liked the actors. So then the second half of the movie, when we switch and they're now adults, the word I'm looking for is anticlimactic. That is how the second half of this movie felt. The first half was like building up really well, like it was building up to something, you know? The ending of this just sort of like fizzled out. I do not like any of the adaptations that leave out the entire second half of the book. And like I said, there has been a couple things I've said that I liked. This adaptation was not terrible by any means. Like, I would probably rate this adaptation 3 stars. The first half was like 5 stars, and then the second half is where like it started to lose me a little bit, but I wasn't like blown away. I wasn't blown away by him or Cathy. They're not my least favorite Heathcliff and Cathy's by any means, but this movie did not beat the last one, 1998. So actually, I am done. I watched a total, at first I was only gonna watch 5. I ended up watching a total of 6 Wuthering Heights adaptations. Like, are you kidding me? Has these adaptations changed my mind on Wuthering Heights? I would say 100% yes. Like, I feel like I have been brought to the other side. I don't know if it's like I've slowly been brainwashed by all of these movies and now I like love Wuthering Heights or something. Am I at the point where I love it? I don't know if I can call it love, but I really highly appreciate it. These movies have really brought the story to life for me, and I think because I have watched it in so many different iterations, it's like sunk into my brain. Wuthering Heights is like my whole universe right now. But these adaptations has been a really good experience for me. It's made me appreciate the book a lot more, and I'm half tempted to rate it 5 stars, but why am I half tempted to rate it 5 stars? Like, right now, I'm half tempted to rate it 5 stars because of like emotional reasons, like the emotional impact that I feel right now. I have finished rereading Wuthering Heights, and I am here to talk to you guys about my final thoughts on the book. I'm in my Wuthering Heights outfit. I think that I love this book when I think of it as a ghost story, as a haunting gothic tale of betrayal and obsession and revenge, and it's really interesting. It's really dark and twisted. It's not a comforting read whatsoever, and I went into this thinking coming off of like my Jane Austen obsession, thinking this is gonna be something in the vein of a Jane Austen book. And a lot of times when I was reading this, I was like, oh my god, like I want to take a break. I want to go to Jane Austen. Like I wish I could be reading Pride and Prejudice right now. And something that still bothers me is how much people romanticize Heathcliff's character. Like I feel like if you look anywhere in the media or pop culture, you will see Heathcliff looked up to as this like romantic, brooding, like dark romantic figure. And he is not that. He is very toxic. He is very twisted. He is deeply abusive. A lot of my thoughts are still the same from my first read. However, I am able to see a really different side of the book, and while a lot of my thoughts are still the same, my emotions are quite different, and I have decided to rate the book 5 stars based on the impact of it and how much I am unable to stop thinking about it. And if I am unable to stop thinking about a book and it sticks in my head and it keeps like talking to me, then I feel like that is a book that deserves 5 stars. So I have some questions here in front of me. I'm going to be trying to answer these questions and get a little bit of my thoughts out on Wuthering Heights. Which emotions dominated my experience and why? So I would say the primary emotion that dominated my experience was anger because of Heathcliff and how horrible and mean he is. Heathcliff borders on pure evil, and I can see how he got there. But it is hard for me to see how he had the energy to continue out his revenge plot for the entire decades that it goes on for. How did he have the energy to continue to spite everyone around him? Why are Heathcliff and Catherine so compelling, even if they are unlikable? Because of how extreme they are. They are on polar ends of the spectrum, and the way that they act is absolutely demented, especially Heathcliff. He truly needs therapy for what he went through and to work through some of his toxic reactions to things. So they're so compelling because they are like a dramatic circus in front of your eyes. How is obsession portrayed in the book? Heathcliff is deeply obsessed with Catherine. And maybe because Catherine is the only one who has ever shown Heathcliff kindness. So that is something else that makes me feel a little bit of sympathy for Heathcliff and why he is so deeply like must have Kathy at all costs, and if he can't have her, nobody can have her and nobody can have happiness. How does the book handle generational trauma? It's an interesting take on generational trauma as well as nature versus nurture. Hareton and Heathcliff were raised in very similar ways. So nurture would show that they should both end up the same way, like equally dark and twisted. But nature shows how Hareton ended up good-hearted at the end of the day, and Heathcliff ended up evil. I'm gonna call Heathcliff evil throughout this whole thing, even though, like I said, I do see like a deeper side to him, but I still find like almost like I detest him deeply still. How does the story's multiple narrators and time jumps affect my reading experience? This story was told from an outsider's perspective. I wonder how the story, the narrative, would differ if it was told from Kathy or Heathcliff's point of view. Does the complexity of names, timelines, and narrators make the story harder to follow or more engaging? The first time I was confused because we get introduced to Lockwood's character, and I'm thinking, okay, Lockwood's going to be the main character, and then he turns out to not matter whatsoever to the story other than being the one that the story is being told to. Which moment stood out as especially intense or haunting? The scene where Heathcliff digs up Catherine's grave just so he can like lay next to her bones and like weep next to her bones. Like, it's so dramatic, but it was also really creepy. And then towards the end, when Heathcliff is starting to go into his own delirium. Oh, earlier on in the book when Kathy is in her fever dream, that was very haunting and one of my favorite parts. And then towards the end, when Heathcliff goes into his delirium, he is starting to see something beyond the periphery of his vision. And he's asking Nellie, do you see anything? Is there anything actually there? And there's nothing there, but to him there is. And that was deeply haunting. I love the ghostly paranormal side of Wuthering Heights. What moments were emotionally wrenching and why? The part where she's like, you killed me. May her soul never rest. Haunt me then. Like, don't leave me alone in this abyss or whatever. Like, that part was really sad. And in every single one of the movies, that part really did almost like make me cry every single time. Also, the emotionally wrenching part was everything that happens to Isabella, and then also everything that happens to, man, the women in this book really draw the short straw. Everything that happens to young Catherine Linton, especially when Heathcliff's son, Linton Heathcliff, when he starts abusing Catherine Linton, when he marries her and then starts abusing her and turns into this evil little, like, demented, like, omen child. Like, I can't believe that all played out the way that all played out as well. How does Heathcliff get unfairly romanticized in fandom? And does the book itself support that? No, the book does not support Heathcliff being romanticized whatsoever. I don't feel like Emily Bronte wanted us to have sympathy for Heathcliff in any way, but the movies definitely lean into that. They want to tell this as like a love story because I think it's easier to sell a love story. Does the story ultimately leave the reader feeling despair, hope, or both? There's like quietness at the end of the book. Like, all of the turmoil is over. It's quiet, it's done. So there is a little bit of hope at the end of this. What do I think is the point of Wuthering Heights? Excellent question, putting me on the spot here. I think it's about telling a story of really complex, extreme, interesting, flawed, deeply layered characters. How does the book's intensity compare to other classics I've read? Whew. Deeply intense. Hard to read in one sitting. Like I said, I am still processing my thoughts on Wuthering Heights. It's been over a month in total since I read it the first time, read it a second time, watched 6 adaptations. The adaptations was a really fun experiment. I really liked doing it. I would love to do this for other books. I do want to say that I am really glad that I read this book. I'm really glad that I read it twice. I'm really glad that I gave it a second chance. And I think I learned something from this reading experience, that sometimes there is more to a book than first meets the eye, and sometimes you do have to sit with it a little bit and consider it and not just go off of your very first reaction to it. And it can also really help if you get like some outside perspective on it. Like for me, watching the film adaptations was getting this outside perspective on it and seeing it told through different people's interpretations. That really helped me to form an emotional connection to this book that through the first time of reading it alone, I lacked. This book also, what I love about it is it really deeply inspired me to want to dive further into other classic Gothic fiction authors. Like, I do want to read more from, it's always been a goal of mine to read everything from all of the Bronte sisters. So I know I have Jane Eyre to read, I have the Tenant of Wildfell Hall. Oh, I really want to read The Mysteries of Udolpho. The Mysteries of Udolpho by Anne Radcliffe. I have a whole list right now of like Gothic Victorian authors that I would really like to read from. I know they're not all from the Victorian era. I loved like doing this really intense deep dive into a book, especially watching all the adaptations, really, and then taking like over a month with one book was a really, really good experience. I want to do this with like every single book I read. So that wraps up my little reading adventure with Wuthering Heights. I had so much fun with this experiment that I definitely plan to do this in the future with other books. I feel like I've gone on the full emotional roller coaster with this book. So even though a lot of my reading experience was really uncomfortable, it prompted 2 back-to-back reads, 6 adaptation viewings, and after all of that, I am still thinking about it. I think that is my favorite part about Wuthering Heights, is how much it keeps turning over my head and how much I still want to understand it. I feel like I would love to take a college course on Wuthering Heights and be able to just analyze it for a whole 16 weeks. I do believe that this is a 5-star read because of how much it has clawed its way into my brain and refuses to let go. I do want to reiterate that I think that the 1998 adaptation was amazing. One of the best book to movie adaptations that I have ever watched. It took the text on the page and brought it to life in a way that completely altered my perceptions of the book. It made me a believer in the hype and a true appreciator for the story Emily Bronte created. If you've read Wuthering Heights before or watched any of the adaptations, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.